Welcome to this week's episode of Doing Justice Brings Joy. Today we will have as a guest Yolanda Taylor, who is a lead attorney at the Center for Community Law and Equity. We're going to be discussing the Supreme Court decision on birthright citizenship, the recent passage of the budget, and we're going to spill a little tea about P. Diddy. Join us today on Doing Justice Brings Joy. Happy 4th of July to everyone today. It's been an eventful week. I was supposed to have this week off, but that didn't work out, thanks to Congress. I want to first start out with a shout out to our Senator Tom Tillis of North Carolina. Those of you who have been my friends and colleagues for the past 15 years or so know that my relationship with Senator Tillis is, iffy. Started out as a Moral Monday arrestee. Interestingly enough, I was arrested as part of the Tillis 15. We're the only Moral Monday arrestees that had a name. We occupied then Speaker. He was the Speaker of the North Carolina House, and he was running for his first term as senator when we occupied, 15 of us occupied his office in protest. And interestingly enough, we were protesting, asking him for Medicaid expansion. And we had a number of young North Carolinians who were in that gap of needing the Medicaid expansion. All of these young people at the time were working. They were working. Some of them were working 2 jobs. There were 2 young ladies who were pregnant, who didn't have health care coverage. They worked in the fast food industry. And they made too much money to qualify for Medicaid, but not enough money to qualify for the American, the American ACA, the American Care Act, or what we commonly refer to as Obamacare. So they didn't make enough for Medicaid, and they made too much for Obamacare. They were in this gap, and I want you to understand this gap is critically important. So my initial relationship with Senator Tillis was when he was Speaker Tillis, and we were trying to get Medicaid expansion in North Carolina, and it took us 10 years to get the expansion. But the people who were participating in that fight were impacted young folks, impacted people suffering from, we had people who were pregnant, people who had diabetes, people who were suffering from cervical cancer. We had I would say out of the 15, we had about 5 members of the clergy. And I would tell you that we never stopped praying. In all these years, we never stopped praying that Senator Tillis would see the light. We felt that, always have felt, that he was going to stand up for the people of our state. And we have been pleased to see that in the rare cases that there's bipartisan bills that have passed the Senate, in almost all of those rare cases over the past 2.5 administrations, he's always been part of that bipartisan group. He is, and the prayers of the righteous availeth much, because he has heard the cry of his people. He has heard the cry of his people here in North Carolina, and he answered by standing with us. He stood with the people of North Carolina. He stood strongly and proudly on that floor to protect the 665,000 North Carolinians who are covered now by Medicaid expansion. That's a growth. That's a growth that I'm proud to say thank you, Senator Tom Tillis. Thank you for being a true Tar Heel. A true Tar Heel. The reason North Carolinians are called Tar Heels is because we stick and stay. And he stuck and stayed true to his North Carolinian roots. He did not waver. He was not a coward. He said he would stand and fight, and he'd give up the trappings of power to stand on principle, to stand for the least of these, to stand for the people of North Carolina. He did that. So Tom Tillis, from one North Carolinian to another, I thank you for representing the people of North Carolina and fighting against this evil bill that was passed. I want to be on the record. People, when you're on the record saying, asking for somebody to stand up and protect, and they finally do, you have the same duty to stand up and thank them for standing with the people. Tom Tillis, you are the pride of North Carolina. You are what a North Carolinian is supposed to be. The motto of our state. I'm just gonna be a little Tar Heel today because I had a senator who stood with the people. And so we have to honor that. But he was a Tar Heel because our motto as a state is to be rather than to seem. And there's a state toast that we give that every North Carolinian I would say over the age of 40, because I don't know what the school system did prior to that, because that's when my kids were out, so I don't know what happened to folks under that age. But we were taught this toast. And there's a line in that toast that drives all North Carolinians who are true North Carolinians. And it says that we are a place where the weak grow strong and the strong grow great. Here's to our home, the old North State, where the weak grow strong. That's the duty of every North Carolinian, not to leave the weak by the side of the road, but rather to help them grow strong. And that means that you feed them nutritious meals, that you provide them appropriate shelter, that you, when they are sick, you serve as the Samaritan and use our global resources to heal them, to make them better. I personally, those of you who know me, know that I have been struggling for nearly 10 years. We're going to have a big celebration in September about that. But I have been struggling for 10 years with a chronic form of cancer called multiple myeloma. The budget that was passed means that the life-saving research that has me here with y'all today is not going to be available if this treatment fails. There's no one working on a cure because the National Cancer Institute was cut. The National Institute of Health was eviscerated in this budget. The CDC has lost its mission. Duke University lost $1 billion with a B dollars in research funds. In the past 50 years, Duke scientists and researchers have written in peer-reviewed journals 17,000 papers on various aspects of various diseases of various things. Gone. This week, this budget destroys civil rights enforcement mechanisms at the national level. And if it wasn't enough that I had to monitor what was going on at the national level, I also had to monitor the evisceration of an over 60 years of human relations commissions in our state. The Human Relations Commission in North Carolina can be saved because right now this funding is part of the continuing resolution. But we have a duty as North Carolinians to protect our good neighbor, it started as the Good Neighbor Commissions by Terry Sanford. He was the first one to initiate it. But it has been a lifesaver for North Carolina. It has kept North Carolina from deteriorating into the kinds of riots and rebellions and uprisings that we have seen across the nation. There was the opportunity for all that to happen here. But whenever there were simmerings of it in our communities, our human relations commissions across the state stood up and stood fast. Our Human Relations Commission has been monitoring hate crimes in our state since the 80s. Our Human Relations Commission has been a partner and is the last gap because the budget cut out the community relations service at the national level. So the national protections are gone or completely eviscerated, and we're left with only state law and state protections. We have to step up and stand with our North Carolina Human Relations Commission and our Office of Administrative Hearings to make sure that we still have civil rights enforcement in our state. There's so much going on. I don't even know where to start, where to finish. The Supreme Court, I don't even know what's going on with them. We're going to talk a little bit about that with Yolanda. We're faced with, again, this is where generational experiences are different, okay? In my lifetime, the Soviet Union, which is now dispersed, and we have individual countries, but Putin is working really hard to try to recreate a Soviet Union. But in my day, there was a Soviet Union. And and we used to be taught that America was, and capitalism and the democracies that we lived in were areas where freedom of expression, where the First Amendment, the 10 Amendments, and the Bill of Rights were an important part of what distinguished us from the communist system, where people's lives were under authoritarian rule, where people could be disappeared without consequence. And here I am, living in an America time when we're bordering, this is the 249th anniversary of our country. And I'm watching on a daily basis where alleged, because we don't know, because they're unmarked, they don't identify themselves, they wear masks, and they strip you from the streets to be disappeared. I'm living in a country where in 28 states, children who are born in this country are born without a country. The Social Security Administration has been told they cannot issue them these children Social Security numbers. These children are not eligible for any kind of passports or visas. There was a book that I had to read when I was in school called A Man Without a Country, about this man who just did not exist. I'm just devastated that I am living in such a time. And I don't what I grew up understanding what America is. I'm seeing destroyed on a daily basis. I'm seeing destroyed on a daily basis. I'm going to take this next 9 minutes to read to you from our Declaration of Independence, because I think it's important on this date that we understand what it is that we are, our country's founding principles. We were not founded by a king, or we were founded on a principle, on a vision of America, of a vision of a country. And I want you to understand what the founding fathers, though imperfect people, and though their vision at the time was limited, but they were fighting for this vision amongst themselves to include all folks. There were provisions debated about dissolving. Let me read this because I'm running out of time. This is the Declaration of Independence. The unanimous declaration of the 13 United States of America. When in the course of human events, it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitled them, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to separation. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with the uncertain, inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. That whenever any form of government becomes destructive to these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundations on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Prudence, indeed, will dictate that these governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes. And accordingly, all experience has shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer while evils are sufferable than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security. Such has been the patient sufferance of these colonies, and such is now the necessity which constrains them to alter their former systems of government. The history of the present King of Great Britain is a history of repeated injuries and usurpations, all having in direct object to the establishment of an absolute tyranny over these states. To prove this, let facts be submitted to a candid world. Now I'm going to read the facts that established our nation. And I want you to check off whether these facts apply now. He has refused his assent to laws, the most wholesome and necessary for public good. He has forbidden his governors to pass laws of immediate and pressing importance, unless suspended in their operation till his assent should be obtained. And when so suspended, he has utterly neglected to attend to them. He has refused to pass other laws for the accommodation of large districts of people, unless those people would relinquish the right of representation in the legislature, a right inestimable to them and formidable to tyrants only. He has called together legislative bodies at places unusual, uncomfortable, and distant from the depository of their public records, for the sole purpose of fatiguing them into compliance with his measures. Listen, this is our Declaration of Independence. He has dissolved representative houses repeatedly for opposing with manly firmness his invasions on the rights of the people. I want you to think about Tom Tillis, Adam Kinzinger, and Darth Vader's daughter. Anybody who opposes him with manly firmness, he dissolves and disposes of them. He has refused for a long time after such dissolutions to cause others to be elected, whereby the legislative powers, incapable of annihilation, have returned to the people at large for their exercise. The state remaining, in the meantime, exposed to all the dangers of invasion from without and convulsions within. He has obstructed, come on now, he has obstructed the administration of justice by refusing his assent to laws for establishing judiciary powers. Does this sound familiar, people? He has made judges dependent on his will alone for the tenure of their offices and the amount and payment of their salaries. He has erected a multitude of new offices, Doge, and sent hither swarms of officers to harass our people and eat out their substance. ICE. He has kept among us in times of peace standing armies without the consent of our legislatures. Los Angeles. He has affected to render the military independent of and superior to civil power. He has combined with other subjects to subject us to a jurisdiction of foreign to our Constitution and unacknowledged by our laws, giving him assent to their acts of pretended legislation. For quartering larger bodies of armed troops amongst us, for protecting them by a mock trial from punishments for any murders which they should commit on the inhabitants of these states, for cutting off our trade with all parts of the world, for imposing taxes on us without our consent, for depriving us, in many cases, of the benefits of trial by jury, for transporting us beyond seas to be tried for pretended offenses. Venezuela, Alligator Alcatraz, for abolishing the free system of English laws in neighboring province, establishing therein an arbitrary government and enlarging its boundaries so as to render it as once an example and fit instrument for introducing the same absolute rule into these colonies, for taking away our charters, abolishing our most valuable laws, and altering fundamentally the forms of our government, for suspending our own legislatures and declaring themselves invested with the power to legislate for us in all cases whatsoever. He has abdicated government here by declaring us out of his protection and waging war against us. He has plundered our seas, ravaged our coasts, burnt our towns, and destroyed lives of our people. He is at the same time transporting large armies of foreign mercenaries to complete the works of death, desolation, and tyranny, already begun with circumstances of cruelty and perfidy scarcely paralleled in the most barbarous ages, and totally unworthy of the head of a civilized nation. He has constrained our fellow citizens, taken captive on the high seas to bear arms against their country, to become executioners of their friends and brethren, or to fall themselves by their hands. He has excited domestic insurrections amongst us, and has endeavored to bring on the inhabitants of our frontiers the merciless, who's known. I'm not going to read that because this is all kind of racist propaganda from that day. And I'm going to skip and read the final thing, and And Yolanda, I don't see you in the studio. And I'm going to send you the link again. Folks, that's in our Declaration of Independence. Too much of why we became a nation is under attack. And we need to change that. So that's your history lesson for the week. And I see that Attorney Taylor has joined us. And so we're going to be talking about some of the impacts this week. And I'm going to try to leave us on a little bit of a happier note. We're going to close out on a much more cheery note in the future. So first, I want to just say welcome to our special guest today, Attorney Yolanda Taylor, who is the leader of the Community and Equity lawsuit. Say it.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Yolanda Taylor with Yolanda L. Taylor Law Firm. I have a policy and advocacy arm called the Center for Community Law and Equity. That's my DBA when I'm doing advocacy and lobbying work. So proud to join you, Stella, you and your viewers.
Thank you for coming. There is so much that we could be talking about today. It's just been one, I just want to say what a privilege it is for me to have you on my show. You and I have, I don't even know how long it's been, but I know it's been a minute and a half that we have been collaborating on fighting for doing justice.
Yes.
Right? And we've done it joyfully too. And you have done some really incredible work. Right now, I know that you are partnering with the North Carolina Black Alliance on some projects. I know you've been very active in working with communities in Edgecombe and Nash counties, in Rocky Mount, trying to assist communities. This is what I really love about your practice, is that you are looking at systemic change. You do really good work with individuals, right? Don't get that twisted. If you need a lawyer, call Yolanda, okay? And Yolanda, if you could put your website in the chat box, we'll
Sure.
make sure that folks get a chance to see it. But your work, your community-based work, I think is so important. And I hope that you can get an opportunity to tell us about it for some reason. Yeah. So I hope you get a chance to talk to us a little bit about your work, and then we'll talk about the tough subjects we have for today.
Okay, that sounds great. I was trying to post my site in your chat, and I don't know. Can you still see me?
I can see you now. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I think
I'll try to do it.
Okay.
While you
But yeah.
tell us a little back.
Okay. Well, hey viewers, again, I think this is my second time on your show, Stella. The first time was a impromptu appearance in San Diego.
Yes, that's right.
Fair housing, conferences. But yeah, viewers, my name is Yolanda Taylor again. I am an attorney. I do individual work. I represent individuals. I represent businesses, nonprofits, and I represent communities. And my website is lawandcommunity.com, spelled out lawandcommunity.com. But to Stella's point, yeah, majority of my work, I will say, stems from my background. I'm a former managing attorney at Legal Aid of North Carolina, and it was at Legal Aid where I was introduced to a practice called community economic development law. And so that's why and how I am able to um, look at legal issues from a community perspective, which I think is important, especially when you're talking about systemic issues. So community economic development law includes topics like workforce development, figuring out why there are lack of jobs for certain populations in the community. I have landed more so around the area of housing, affordable housing, and looking at, what can community groups do? They move in concert or collectively towards winning gains at the local level before their city council or their town commissioners in the area of housing and or how their neighborhoods will develop, ensuring that they are not left behind because of things like gentrification, which is a market force that happens when wealth is injected into historically lower wealth communities. So those are some of the great things I've done. But I've helped individual people who have had issues with developers, encroaching on their property or trying to take land they feel. So I do have some individual clients as well around zoning and land permitting. I've helped some developers who are interested in doing affordable housing work. So that's the work I do as it relates to the community work you're talking about, Stella. But I also do wills, estates, and trusts, contract law, nonprofit law, and again, I represent businesses as well. So I'm doing a lot.
You are doing a whole lot, and what you're doing is not in vain. Okay, I want to add that what you're doing is not in vain. You are a serious social justice warrior, and we're so happy to have you with us for your second appearance. And there are three things I want to chit chat with you about. One, it's been just a really busy week. And if you don't mind sharing with us, because I'm going to be honest, I'm a little, it's hard to get me confused about a legal case, but make it make sense. What the Supreme Court decision in the birthright citizenship case did, and what it means for all cases going forward, because they didn't really decide whether folks had birthright citizens. They decided what what was it that it actually does.
But what it really did was, like you said, it didn't decide on that ultimate issue. It really decided on how far can a federal judge ruling go, basically. Since Trump has taken office, there's been a series of lawsuits filed from states, by states, attorney generals, like our own state attorney general here. Did as well, filed a lawsuit, but there have been various lawsuits filed to stop maybe some of the freezes on HUD funds, some of the delays, some of the firings. It's so hard to keep up of all the lawsuits, but I'm sure just generally your viewers have heard that lawsuits have been filed to stop some of Trump's executive order actions, right? Because basically Trump has been operating as if his executive orders are law, which they are not. Executive orders are something that a president of the United States can do. That's it. That's within a president's executive's powers, which is what I want to say. But we live in a democratic society where we have three branches of government: the judicial, which I'm going to get into about the case, the legislative branch, and of course the executive branch. Well, it's up to Congress to make laws, right? Not the president. The president enforces laws. Well, some of these the actions he's taken have been challenged as unconstitutional. So we know that, one of the executive actions is to roll back birthright citizenship as it relates to those who he deemed shouldn't be in this country, right?
Right.
Even though they were probably born to migrants. But so that's what that ultimate issue is. But this case basically said that federal judges that have issued, I guess, a injunctive order that is only applicable to the plaintiff that filed the lawsuit is not nationally applicable. So that plaintiff has won on that issue of birthright citizenship, but the nation has not won on that issue, if that makes sense, because they're basically saying that these federal preliminary injunctive orders that have been issued by federal judges, that they only apply to the particular plaintiff that filed the lawsuit, or the state, if it's a state, but not.
We're very lucky that our state attorney general, shout out, our state attorney general, Jeff Jackson, was one of the attorney generals that were part of the complaint. So we're just really lucky to have him to have done that. I see we're having a little bit of technical.
Oh, sorry.
He's back.
I'm on my tablet, and I'm sorry if I venture any kind of way. I flipped over. Sorry about that, viewers.
My viewers are used to these technical things, so I'm getting better at it. But they're accustomed. They're not gonna hate on us on that. But yeah, Jeff Jackson was able to go against. Participate in this. There had been an effort by the General Assembly to say that he could not file suit against the federal government without their approval, or he couldn't join other AGs in fighting the government. But I think that the Supreme Court, at least I'm asking you.
Okay.
If the Supreme Court says that the only legitimate folks who can file, get an injunction include state attorney generals, then that's a duty he has to protect North Carolinians, correct? And I don't think the General Assembly can say, no, you can't protect us from overreach from the federal government, because the 10th Amendment, people read your Bill of Rights. Read your Bill of Rights. The 10th Amendment says that states do have that power.
Yeah, but we know that our current General Assembly, from day one, has tried to roll back power of our Attorney General and our governor. So I wouldn't be surprised if they are trying to roll back his power. And I believe vaguely, and I'm sorry I wasn't prepared for that particular question, but I believe, no, that's okay. But I believe vaguely I saw, a bill where they were looking at, because they're tired of our Attorney General being used to sue the state. So I believe that was wrapped up in a bill proposal, which was to limit his ability or the office of North Carolina Attorney General from doing things that, mess with things that the legislator was trying to do, like, redistricting and things like that. Like, so I do know they want to roll back that power. Luckily, though, they don't have the supermajority anymore in North Carolina. But I mean, they don't have that anymore. But we got to hold those Democrats that have been elected accountable, because there have been some Democrats that have not always voted with the party. But we got to hold them accountable if the governor vetoes a bill by the Republican-led legislature. We want to definitely make sure that we have all the Democrats, voting along party lines to sustain a veto by the Democratic governor. So, and we know that, just recently, all the anti-DEI bills were vetoed by Josh Stein. Yes. So that's a celebration. So now that's an example of, now that it's been vetoed, the Republicans may try to override the veto, but in order to do that, they're going to need Democrats, or few, to deflect from the party. So we're hoping that they won't do that. But going back to that case, I was just looking for my notes on that, just to level set with your viewers. This Supreme Court ruling happened on June 27th. and it was a 6-3 decision. And the case was called Trump versus CASA, CASA, if you want to look it up. Again, they did not rule on the constitutionality of the birthright citizenship itself, but they focus again on the remedy of finding that universal nationwide injunctions, whether or not nationwide universal injunctions exceed the court's equitable power. But they felt that Justice Amy, I should say Coney Barrett, wrote the majority opinion with Justice Thomas, Alito, Kavanaugh, and Gorsuch. They concurred in certain parts together. But the key takeaways from this case is that, again, nationwide injunctions, which is, what is an injunction? I like to break things down for viewers. I know you was not a lawyer. An injunction is basically an order that's saying you got to stop or pause on whatever action you started. So it's a way someone can run to court and tell the judge, make him stop. And, then with the judge, issues that injunctive, order, and an attorney has to really prove a case. They can't just go in there and just say, make them stop. Of course, underlying the motion for injunctive preliminary relief is a actual lawsuit, a complaint that shows that the plaintiff, will be injured or suffer what's called irreparable harm if this action is allowed to continue, but also that there's a likelihood of success on the merits if the case was to be brought. So the judge is looking at the underlying complaint, what the legal issues is, and then deciding whether or not they would issue this stop delay order, right? So, but these nationwide injunctions by these different federal judges were done to make Trump stop his actions as it relates to birthright citizenship, rolling that back. Usually it's an order that's in place for 30 days. Sometimes it's a 30-day delay. And I believe in this case, it was a 30-day delay that was set in place. But the issue why it matters is that birthright citizenship as guaranteed under the 14th Amendment was originally for us, Black people, which said that the descendants of slaves were citizens of the United States. But now today, of course, it's being expanded, for not just Black people, but maybe those who were born to parents who were not citizens, right? But they were born here.
But it is clear, this plain language that anyone born in America is a citizen. I mean, that's plain language. There's no, if you're a slave and you're born, it says anyone, any person.
Mm-hmm. Well, we know Trump doesn't like that. We're talking about a category of children who are probably adults now called dreamers. We know that other administrations like the Obama administration and the Biden administration, have, honored dreamers or children who were born here to immigrant parents who may not have been citizens at the time they arrived, but may be working on their citizenship. So he's trying to do that. And my thing, I'm concerned as an African-American person, because I'm just like, birthright citizenship, that could be a slippery slope. I'm not saying that they're going to undo our citizenship, Stella, but I'm like,
if you start tampering, look, if you look at Justice Thomas's
opinion,
his opinion, he's saying we should go back and look at, I don't know if it's in this ruling, if they had so many rulings that day, but that we should go back and look at whether we should be enforcing Section 1983, which is the enforcement of the 14th Amendment, right? I mean, if you start tampering with the 14th Amendment, you are tampering with Black folks. And this is one of those things, first they came for the immigrants, and then they came for me kind of situations, because any attack on the 14th Amendment, any weakening of the 14th Amendment takes away the protections of the law. And now the law is not a protector of our freedom.
Exactly. So that's what we hope doesn't happen. Again, I want to say that this court, the U.S. Supreme Court, did not decide on the constitutionality of the 14th Amendment. So they left the 14th Amendment alone. But
But the
again,
other thing they didn't do is they didn't lift the injunction.
yeah, they did do that. They just ruled narrowly, it seems, just on this specific
But
issue of whether or not universal injunctions could be enforced to block federal policies nationwide.
so is that not, could we not interpret that as that the fundamental decision of the court that the plaintiffs were likely to win on the merits still existed because they had the ability to make the ruling they did and to say that the injunction was lifted for all the plaintiffs, but they didn't do that. They left the named plaintiff's injunction in place. They named the attorney general's injunction in place, and they left in place the representative organization injunctions in place. But they had the power to do it, and then they said, and then they had some really wimpy language around it seems likely. um, they weren't declarative. There's a lot of kind of wishy-washy language in there. um, and they did have the ability to just squash the injunctions totally, and they didn't do it. So I'm hopeful they can cobble together at least 5 votes.
Well, maybe because just to answer your question, yeah, you're right. They did not do anything with the actual injunctive relief that was put in place. They decided that the Maryland District Courts, even though they decided that the Maryland District Court's injunctive order was too broad, they allow it to continue temporarily because these preliminary injunctive relief orders are temporary anyway. So they just allow it to stay. So that could be one reason, because they knew it was going to be temporary. If it was something more permanent, or had more permanent implications,
Okay.
maybe they would have done something. But yeah, and also, I'm just thinking too. They possibly recognize that lifting the injunctive could cause maybe this sudden disruption, potentially stripping citizenship from children born during the legal confusion, because we are living in a time where there's a lot of chaos and confusion right now.
Right.
So so the underlying court only had like a 30-day pause in place, before any changes take effect.
Now, when
So
did that 30 days start? Did that start after the Supreme Court? Or did it start in February?
well, it was
Like,
a
when is
well,
that 30 day? Is that
well
30 days already over, or was
good.
it paused and now it started? What's
Um,
the deal?
I mean, that's a good question, but I will say that it started from the day the judge issued the order, or the order will say. The order probably specifically stated the time frame, but again, it was appealed, which added more time, right? So it's obviously been low enough since February, but this appeal has delayed it even more, right? So it could effectively be up. I can see if I can find an answer to that, but just thinking that, if this case happened several months ago, then that 30-day appeal would have been up. The 30-day injunctive order would have been up, but for this appeal that continued it, because it was a fight, there was a legal confusion. But the lower court is going to, the lower court is now aware of the Supreme Court's ruling, which takes precedent, because the U.S. Supreme Court has their rulings have precedent over lower federal courts. But I guess the district court now has time, given this ruling, to modify the injunctive order, so that will only cover actual plaintiffs in the case. So that will be more consistent with this new ruling by the U.S. Supreme Court. So this is what I think that's possibly going to happen, is that the lower court will now have to restructure that order to make it applicable to only the plaintiffs that brought the case. So who knows? Maybe it could be another 30 days. I'm curious to see what the judges are going to do in this restructuring of their initial order.
I'm gonna ask you and give you like 10 minutes to talk about these next two subjects, or 15, maybe 15, 10 on one, and then we're just gonna do a little tea party on P. Diddy. But because I gotta close out with something a little lighthearted.
Yes.
It's been a heavy week, and so I want to get your opinion on that for the close. But yesterday, they actually passed the Senate version. I did think there'd be some pushback. I really thought there'd be some pushback in the House, because I was counting on my fellow deficit hawks to stand firm, but they melted like snow.
They folded. Yeah, they melted like snow, and they folded, I don't know, like a deck of cards. But when I went to sleep, what night was that? Thursday night. It looked like there were four, senators that were holding out. But it was the overnight thing with that minority leader of the House, Jeffries, like giving his 8-hour debate on the floor, delaying the vote as well, standing there for 8 hours. I don't know how they do it. That they mentally have to prepare for this, right? he and Cory Booker should definitely get their coins for some of these long debates that they've done. And of course, it was to delay the vote. I guess, I don't know, maybe behind the scenes they were working on Republicans, the ones, but also behind the scenes we know that the Republicans' king, Trump, was also working on them as well too, and making promises and I mean giving clarity. I don't know how he can give clarity about the bill, because I don't think he understands the bill himself. But I think he's just implementing Project 2025. I think they're puppet masters behind the scenes, the writers, the architects.
They clearly are. The Heritage Foundation, they are clearly behind this. This is a 44-year effort by them. This is the culmination of 44 years of their preparation for the unitary president, for the capitulation. You only have checks and balances if the people are willing to do the checking. When Congress, when Congress, when behind the scenes, he's promising them, and this is what we're going to have to watch out for, people, in the next 30 days, because he's going to have to do this rapidly, so that they can go home and argue. He's going to be issuing, now the court has said, issue all the executive orders you want. Nobody can stop you nationwide unless they get class action relief, and they got to follow the ordinary course of business. He's going to be issuing executive orders left and right. Apparently, last night, before the vote, to secure the vote, because on the House side, he only had 5 votes to play with, and he had to persuade 3 people not to vote for the bill that shouldn't have voted for it. There are at least 12 alleged deficit hawks that shouldn't have voted for this bill.
And I heard one of them, and I can't think of his name, but he was a Republican senator that said that, he had stood 10 toes down against it. But then he spoke with Trump, and Trump explained to him, and he claimed he was threatened. Trump clarified for him that he can use his executive power tools to fix
the executive orders to fix it.
And to me, if you voted, whoever, and I'm gonna have to look for his name because I want viewers to know who it is. I don't think any of your viewers voted for him, but I mean, whoever voted for this senator, should be outraged that this senator is, basically punting his responsibility
Well,
as a
yeah,
legislator to make the
this
law
is
right.
what I'm saying. There's no check. There's no check in the check and balance if you're not willing to do. You're not really to say no. You're not. If the legislature will bow to the king, if they'll bend the knee to the king, and you got the judiciary bending in, not the plain, but you got the Supreme Court bending the knee. Okay, you have a king.
Kissing the ring, but I'm about to change that to kissing the booty, because basically that's what they're doing, Stella. I'm sorry, but I mean, yeah, doing all that. Yeah, so you as a legislator is going to let the king, through his executive powers, fix the law, but you have a duty to the people that voted you in and who trusted you to ensure that their health care and their food assistance would not, be terminated. You had a responsibility to make sure that you and your fellow senators fix the bill, because who knows what Trump is going to do at this point. He got what he wanted, and the bill hasn't been presented to him yet.
And his history is, once he's got what he wanted, he doesn't give a flying flip about you. Okay, he didn't even, once he got that money out of Elon Musk, look at how he treated the man that spent what, $100 million.
He disregarded Musk like he was a side chick or something. I mean, just and then Musk is acting like a side chick. Going back and forth with him on X, on social media. I mean, it's so petty to just see this romance, whatever it was, and just to see them, fight it out, and now Musk is threatening to primary anyone that voted for this bill. So let's just see what kind of power Musk had. I was reading the comments under Musk's threats on X the other day, formerly known as Twitter, and a lot of people were just telling him he just need to sit this one out. He need to calm down, because I mean, I don't know. Yeah, Musk has more money, but these people are blindly following their king. I don't think he
doesn't. A lot of the industrialists, because they're the people under there's a cult of Trump, but they're also pragmatists that thought there were moneyed people who thought they could control Trump, that they wouldn't benefit, that their benefits outweighed whatever harm he was going to do to other people.
Yeah, I've heard that too.
Okay. And
the means justified the end.
Yeah. And they thought they could control him, and they can't. Okay. And now you got Donald Trump unleashed, right? And he's he's talking about taking away Elon Musk's citizenship.
Yes. And you know what? I wouldn't even care, because I don't like the fact that Elon Musk, lied on South Africa, claiming that there's 59 white Afrikaners that were granted asylum, right, in this country, that they were the victims of, like, I don't know, what was it, genocide?
So that was the thing, but it's always about money. Okay. Right. And what happened was, South Africa as a country decided it was going to use what we in America call eminent domain and take away the ownership rights of these South Afrikaners, and use that land for the public good. They were going to get paid fair market value, but what South Africa implemented was eminent domain. Okay, now, Yolanda, you and I don't have to do anything but look outside our doors. Look at how they have used eminent domain to destroy Black communities all over the country through the highway system. Notice that all the highways and byways cut through the Black community.
The graveyard.
and okay, and the power of eminent domain. They wiped out. They wiped out the Black community in New York City to build Central Park. They wiped out the Black community in near Atlantic City to build the roads that would lead all roads to Atlantic City. They bifurcated the Black community in Houston. They the highways in New Orleans go through what were the historic bypass and took over those lands. This is a universal. So if
and in North Carolina, one of my client groups, Happy Hill Neighborhood Association, the historically Black community of Happy Hill in Winston-Salem, Highway 52 bifurcated their community.
In Durham, they destroyed the Hayti community.
Yes.
So if what was done to the Afrikaners is a human rights violation, right? And something where we should be refugees and we're being destroyed, give me a passport somewhere.
I mean, no, exactly. And I'm not feeling sorry. I hate to say it for, land that was stolen to begin with, being, in their opinion, stolen back by the government. I don't have any tears for that.
I have no tears. no tears for the colonizers the people being restored to their land. Okay. I don't have any sympathy. And there was the violence that goes on against the indigenous people of South Africa caused by the Afrikaners versus the occasional reap what you sow that they have benefited from.
And I know we don't condone violence because we are Bible toting women, progressive Bible toting women. We don't condone violence against the white Afrikaners, but don't lie and say it's genocide. When there are Black and brown countries that have genocide occurring, which Trump, when he took office, he stopped the whole process of allowing them over as refugees. So, but he carved out an exception to the 59 white Afrikaners because of Elon Musk, getting back to him. And now Elon Musk is being threatened with deportation. And I don't know if that's true. I don't know if he's actually going to do it. I think Elon Musk has so much money in this country. He's working on, SpaceX, which has been a flop, lately. So he's embedded with NASA and, in the government as well. And he probably knows where the bones are buried. He was the head of DOG.
No, he buried the bones. What are you talking about? He buried the bones.
So he buried them. He helped bury them.
He killed them and he buried them. And I have always feared when you allow a private company, there should be no such thing as a public-private partnership on defense, on national security. Okay, we buy the stuff. You show us how to. You give us the software. You're building it for us. It's our property rights. It's our patents as a government, and it can't be used by others. Because he has the Skylab. What is the thing he has?
Talking about the space shuttle business?
Not the space shuttle business, the satellite business.
Oh.
That directs communications. Like he gave it to Ukraine at first to defend against Russia. Then he turned it off and let the Russians bomb them. But that same system is part of our military. And so if he and Trump get into a big ego match and he decides to turn off our national security system,
yes,
we're vulnerable. And and that he's been able to shop that around as his private business as opposed to it being part of our military structure. It's just a dangerous thing, but they built the crazy and the crazy is there. I just want to
Yeah.
appreciate you for being on the show, and I just gotta get your opinion
Okay.
about the results of the Sean Puffy Combs
Sean
drop,
Diddy.
P Diddy Puff Love whatever, the overall your overall opinion of it, but I'm also specifically interested in your opinion about him not getting bond after and explaining to my listeners about him why he didn't get bond and why it was appropriate he didn't get bond after the convictions, and your idea about where you think the judge might land on his sentencing. Just a little tea, that's all. We're not
Okay.
trying to get deep, but I just want to know your overall opinion and those two things.
Yeah, well, my overall opinion as it relates to Diddy, Sean Combs is his official name, is that the prosecution was very disappointing as far as the case. They had us thinking that they had this big case, right? That they had enough evidence, to charge him with racketeering and sex trafficking, which were the most serious charges. But apparently, they alluded to things just like the TikTok videos and all the social media posts about Diddy, but call no witnesses to collaborate on any of this, right? So a lot of people are saying now that he was overcharged, or they believe he was overcharged, apparently because they had no key witnesses who could testify and collaborate. Now I don't know if the prosecution team, is allowed to later, unpack why this case fell apart as it related to the serious charges. Like I don't know if there were witnesses that they had planned to call, but that they skipped town, they flew out, got
I
a
know one of them did.
so I don't know if the witnesses were like planned and that they were planning to call witnesses, but for whatever reason they didn't show up and they couldn't locate them. Because like you said, I did hear about one witness that did that, but I think based on what I'm hearing, and of course this trial wasn't televised because of federal rules allowing media and cameras and things like that into the courtroom. It wasn't televised, but the sketch artist, she tried her best to do a good job, but she didn't, in my opinion.
No, I wasn't impressed with this
I
particular
was
sketch art.
impressed with the sketch artist. But my opinion is that, I guess based on the evidence that they brought, that it looks as if, the jury did what, it had to do, given the burden of proof the prosecution had, which is beyond a reasonable doubt. And so, so Diddy was charged with the, 2 counts of, what was it, like prostitution. Um, there was a alternate juror that came out and apparently spoke to CNN and said that he found Cassie Ventura's case to be very credible. They found, well, her testimony to be very credible, that she appeared credible on the stand, and that he believed her. But they had to do, so they don't believe it was consensual. Some people say they believed it was consensual because she continuously went through it. But I guess until you walk in the shoes of a woman that's in a situation like that, I mean, it's really hard to judge. I mean, it's easy for me to say, well, woman, really, you care that much about money and fame that you allow yourself to be part of freak offs? That's the judgmental side. But again, I don't know. I mean, usually, as someone who has helped, survivors of domestic violence and have helped them get orders to protect themselves, domestic violence protective orders. I mean, I know that there's this battered women syndrome. I know that women are financially often dependent upon their abusers. And I know that it's more than physical, it's mental, and it's emotional, and it's spiritual. So it's hard to really break that. But back to Diddy, I think the reason why, well, let's just talk about his lawyers. I think his lawyers were apparently the dream team for him because they didn't call a single witness. they just submitted exhibits and gave a closing argument, right? And he was acquitted again, like I said, of most of the serious charges of racketeering and sex trafficking. So they are in the press saying that this was a win. So I didn't think the prosecution team again was as tight as it should have been. But as it relates to, you know, whether or not he should have gotten bonded out, I mean, I think the judge did the right thing by denying his request for bail after the jury found him, you know, just guilty on those 2 counts of transportation of prostitution. I think that's the actual charges, because his own lawyers conceded to the fact that he was violent. So why would you get bail? Your own lawyers conceded to the fact that you were violent. So my understanding is that's why the judge was like, no, we're not going to do it because of your years of long patterns of violence, you know, so you need to stay here a little while. But I think Diddy thought he was going home because, you know, the sketch artist drew something of him on his knees saying, you know, yes, you know, praying and doing all that. But he still faces up to 20 years in federal prison.
So that's the final thing I want to ask you, and then I'm gonna give you my opinion of it too. So where do you think this judge, considering his demeanor all along the way, and it's his decision alone, do you think he's going to go with consecutive sentences? And how long do you think he's going to make those sentences, considering also that Diddy is going to get time served?
Well, I know Diddy is going to get time served, but I think the judge, again, you know, it's hard because we weren't there, you know, to really hear the testimony or like, you know, we've seen it in written print, but to like really see the credibility of these people, because in addition to Cassie, there was this anonymous Jane Doe woman that was testifying as well. So I think apparently the judge thinks he's very violent to the point that he's a threat, a public safety threat to the community if he was released. I think, you know, just hearing what the alternate juror said and other folks have said about the videos that were played. Well, somebody said, you know, that the video was just a bunch of rubbing oil, no, folks. But other than that, it appeared consensual, like physically consensually, but maybe mentally it wasn't for these women. I think the judge, and I'm not a criminal, you know, defense attorney, but I did very well in criminal law in law school. I got the highest A. So let me just say what my prediction might be. Maybe it will be consecutive and not concurrent. I think it should be consecutive because of the fact that, you know, this man is violent. You even had a rapper, even though it didn't lead to any, you know, the racketeering charges. You had a rapper say that he believed that his car was blown up by Diddy. He testified.
Mm-hmm.
Is it Kid Cudi? I think that's his name. But yeah, he testified to that, you know, and again, your own attorneys conceded that he was violent. So hopefully it will be consecutive. That's my prediction. Do you think it will be concurrent? Do you think he will do it?
I think it's going to be consecutive. And I think it's going to be, I think he's going to pick a number that's going to keep Diddy in jail 2 full years. And on federal time, it's 80% time served. So I think he's going to do, okay, Diddy's, by October time, he will have been in court. He will have been in jail a year.
Yeah.
Right? So I think he's going to give him 42 months. And I think he's going to give him 42 months and he's going to split it up. Like maybe it's going to give him 48 months. He's going to give him 2 years on each charge. And then and he's going to do it consecutive and he's going to give him time served and that'll give him 2 years actual time in federal prison. That's what I think. But I do want to just give my opinion about the whole thing.
Well, yeah. Well, that will be, I think, the other question is, can he be rehabilitated in the minds of, public core or public forum, like, are people going to look at him differently? And I think people will. I don't think anybody's going to another Diddy party.
There will be no more white parties. There'll be no more glamorous white parties and things like that, because people gonna know what's going on in the back room. That's over.
And if there are freak offs, then hey, nobody's going to feel sorry for you because you've been warned about the freak offs publicly, right? But what about the civil lawsuits too?
Oh, so they're already. Look, Tony Busby, the minute he was, I don't know about this Tony Busby dude. We'll do that for another tea time.
Yes.
But I do want to say about the people who question the consent of Cassie and Jane, that Cassie was 19 when that relationship started. And we keep comparing the psychology to domestic violence. But the psychology we ought to be comparing it to is that of the pimp and the street woman, the
streetwalker,
sex worker.
Yeah, sex worker, yeah.
Because if you've ever looked at the Mac or any of those, there's the way the pimp seduces, and what do they call it now? Grooms,
yeah.
The innocent young person. They take over. It's a mind game. It's mind control and dependence. It's a mental dependence. It's a thirst for approval, love, and they first bind them in that dependence. Then they start them on a journey, and at some point they introduce drugs.
Yeah, I was about to say the drugs part too. So that's control.
It's all control. It's intentional control. And did he use pimpology? Not psychology. He used pimpology to control Cassie. Because I know Cassie was 19, she was in an innocent mind, a naive, innocent mind. She had no experience on which to judge whether this was appropriate or not. And it was coercion and control.
And she's even testified that, he kissed her for the first time on her birthday and it made her cry. Like, so she did not like it. She felt it was, inherently or intuitively, she felt that it was inherently wrong. Is what I'm trying to say. That my boss shouldn't be kissing me. He's a much older man. I mean, because Diddy's older than me, right? I'm like, Diddy, you're like what? I think he's 55, going to 56 or something like that. I'm like, this is just ridiculous. And as a mom of two young girls, because then the fault blames on the parent. But again, she was 19, so she was an adult.
She was technically an adult.
Technically an adult, as far as like whether or not the parents could have forced him or forced her to come back or get, a court order or some kind of legal remedy to.
And he waited till she turned 19.
Yeah, so that
was on her birthday, because that was intentional. Okay, that was intentional. So to me, there is very strong, I think what happened, because if you, all through the process, before the process even started, they had an intractable juror. And I think that there was some compromises made so that they could get to a verdict. And the compromises, and I think they fought hard. I think they compromised and said, okay, there's no sex trafficking with Jane. They fought about whether they were going to do the sex trafficking with Cassie. That's why they pulled her testimony in. That's why they pulled the testimony of the escort in and read through those transcripts, because the fight, I think, if you look at how long it took and the fight
Yeah.
was about was their sex trafficking with Cassie. But they still had to get to the RICO, and because the two prostitutions made it eligible for RICO, but there was no evidence of the enterprise.
Yeah, there was
They
no.
should have called. I understand from all the pundit shows why KK wasn't called, because she never met with the prosecution, and
that was his like what, like
and he
manager?
was being defended by the same people defending, but the one of the they had to bring in one of the security dudes, D-Rock or whatever the other
Oh
one.
yeah, that's the one that they alluded to, but he never testified.
He had to one of those security dudes who was part of this process. They had to testify. You had to bring them in and
Yeah.
give them the
So
same immunity you gave the other two who weren't helpful.
so
Like,
why weren't these essential witnesses, like you said, that could testify to show that this was an enterprise, and the drug mule. I mean, I thought he was going to have more tea to drop, but the drug mule testified, but apparently he could not. His testimony alone wasn't enough to prove an enterprise. Just that Diddy
because
always
he
wanted drugs.
wasn't even carrying weight.
Yeah, he was just a drug mule, basically, like his title is. He was just the person supplying the drugs for the parties and the freak offs but yeah, so definitely glad that they found something. But you
And
stated
I don't see how they didn't find Rico, because the bribery was that was prima facie. There was no defense. That was summary judgment on the bribery, right? They gave him $100,000 and he spent it. He dispersed it, and they hid the
and
tape for 10 years.
did Albie Sure testify? I know he was.
No.
Yeah, exactly. But he was definitely had a documentary, part of a documentary, claiming that he thinks he's in a coma. I mean, there's just so many unanswered questions
But
about Diddy.
And why didn't they bring the gun charges?
Yeah, why didn't they bring the gun charges as well? I don't know. And I mean, I wonder, because you remember there was another prosecutor that, who brought and announced these charges. Remember, he resigned or left right when the new administration came in. So I don't know. I mean, I don't know if that hurt the case, but there are a lot of unanswered questions, like you were saying, that there are some things that we're speculating happened behind closed doors, like you said, with the jury, why weren't these essential witnesses or material witnesses present to prove the case? Like, why did it fall apart? I would like to know, were people paid off? Was there witness tampering?
So these are the interesting things. It's not like the Diddy party is over. Now we get to the civil cases. We've got.
I hope, going back to your sentencing part, I really hope he gets more than 2 years, at least 5. But it may be in the middle somewhere.
I think I'm more concerned about how much actual time he's going to spend, and I can't see. I believe he should get 5 actual years in jail, and I'm just not sure that that you can get there on these prostitution charges. That's my concern about that. And I think that 50 Cent can keep this thing alive for 2 years, right?
We can't keep it alive, yeah.
And so we know that Did He Do It is coming out, or Did He Did It is coming out in the next 6 months. I don't. Does he have to wait until sentencing to air it, or can he air it now?
I don't know. I mean, he might want to. I mean, to make for a good movie, you might want to have the sentencing piece in there too. Like that could be the end of the movie. I don't know again, like why this guy, the security guy, did not testify. But I think it was a good strategy, I guess, by the defense team,
The
not to
defense,
call
yeah.
any witnesses, not to call any witnesses that could be, cross-examined, and just like, rest on the exhibits and the things that you put in there. Well, I mean, so that's it. Did he do it? Some people still think he did, but we know, Stella, we know that, justice is not always served. We know as justice seekers that, we got to continue to work hard. And sometimes it's outside of the court system. And we do that a lot. We do that a lot. So I think Cassie did an amazing job. I applaud her for her courage, for coming forth. I'm glad that she's moved on her life. She's a mother. She has, a loving husband, it seems. And her attorneys were saying that, she, by telling her story, she did.
It cleansed her.
It cleansed her, and it revealed something, I guess, maybe Hollywood is shook up now. Will they be shook up? Or are they willing to go through? Because Diddy has spent a lot of money on his team, right? So he's less wealthy. I don't know how much money he has now.
By the time they get finished with him in civil court, because remember, OJ was not convicted of the crime.
Yes, he was not. Yep.
But they did take his dime.
They took his dime in civil court. Yep.
And so that's what's going to happen. That's clearly what's going to happen to Diddy. Because Don, who did testify in the trial,
Don Richards,
he's got a lawsuit pending. She's going to end up with some settlement funds, and you're going to have, and I think that there are. I can't think of his name. I think
he was assistant. Yeah, wasn't he like a personal assistant? Didn't he like come out in the end, one of the last accusers?
Yeah,
but there's like more than 60 civil, I guess, lawsuits that have been filed against Diddy.
There are more than 60 lawsuits, but I think there are about 4 that I think are gonna be telling. There's a case I saw on News Nation where they did a series around that civil case, and there are actual police records and phone calls, and there are hospital records, and I'm not sure. Again, because of the role of drugs, there's some concern, but I think that case is strong enough, and it implicates the sheriff's department, and I think that case has some merit, and I think it's going to. It didn't fit into the pattern that maybe the prosecution was looking at, although I think it would have helped to have a victim who was not his girlfriend. But so, and I think
there's the whole rumor about Kim, his former girlfriend, Kim Porter, the alleged book she wrote, which no one can point to and I read that book because it was online one night, and I just read it, and it was a quick, easy read. Difficult in the sense that what the alleged book was saying was from Kim, but I mean it was very intriguing. So I was able to sit there to read the electrical book. So I don't know if it's true or not, but I mean, hey, if she's speaking from her grave, But that just goes back to the point that no one will ever see him the same again, just like a lot of people don't see R. Kelly the same again. But for your listeners, as we talk about these civil cases, I want to let them know if they're wondering, like, well, if he lost some of the serious criminal charge, or he won against some of the serious criminal charges filed against him, how can these civil suits stand? Well, to your point, some are strong and the other evidence will come up, and they have a lower burden of proof in civil cases, right? It's a preponderance of the evidence. It's not beyond a reasonable doubt. So it's easier to win a civil case than you can a criminal case. Or it's easier to prove a civil case.
So what's the scale on preponderance? Is it more likely or not, or a scintilla, or I mean, what's the is it what's the kind of definition of preponderance?
From law school, I recall, and from actual work, preponderance of the evidence is that the majority of the evidence points to liability. I mean, yeah, you're gonna look at all the evidence, and there might be some that's not, but when you look at the totality of the evidence, the preponderance of the evidence, it points to the likelihood of liability under these civil claims that are being filed.
So yeah, so he didn't do the time, but he's gonna spend the dime on these. Yeah.
What do you think about his mom? What do you think about his mom being there every day? Her mom's gonna do what mom's gonna do.
Look, your mom's supposed to have your back, good, bad, different, okay? Unfortunately, in this case, there appears to be evidence that she was a co-conspirator in some of these.
Yeah, because there were pictures of her, like, at the parties, which I don't know at her age, like how she can still be going to these type of parties. But yeah, I know she's supporting him. But yeah, again, like, just going back to the whole civil thing, like, her future might, I'm sure he supported her. He supported his kids. I mean, he's definitely going to be less wealthy, if wealthy at all, after all of this. Some folks thought Trump's going to pardon him. I don't think Trump wants to touch this because of the simple fact, I don't think his base has an appetite for him pardoning. Am I saying it right? Pardoning a black man. I hate to say it like that, but just from reading the social media comments, they don't have the appetite for Trump letting Diddy go free. Even though they don't care about the insurrection that's going free, but black celebrity like Diddy, they don't want that. But again, preponderance of the evidence, it is, like the totality of the evidence, it's more than 50%, right? It's more than 50%. And so you're looking at, looking at all the evidence, it's more than 50% of the evidence makes me as a juror believe that it's more likely than not true. Does that make sense?
It makes sense, and thank you, Yolanda, for coming on and making it make sense for us. And I'm gonna be calling on you again. Yolanda is the host of a radio show called
All Rights Reserved.
All Rights Reserved.
92.1 FM Choice. Yes.
So 92.1.
Yeah, FM Choice. It really broadcasts mostly in Eastern North Carolina, but some parts of the Triangle can pick it up. If not, you can always go to the Facebook page, I Love Choice FM, and you can see it stream there.
So check out her radio show. I was on this week. So.
Yes, Stella was, and thank you so much. We talked about this big, disgusting bill that passed, and I don't know what we're going to do now. Like, I think, you don't mind me saying as we end, that some folks that are supportive of it was talking about the tax cuts he's giving, like, but
there's nobody we know, nobody we know, and a whole lot of people who think they're going to benefit from this tax break. By the time they throw the tariffs, by the time they do the other stuff, they're in the hole. If you're not making over $700,000,
Mm-hmm.
listen to me, people. This is fact. This is a fact and stat piece.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not making over $700,000, you are not a beneficiary of this tax bill. You are either wading in the water, it didn't hurt you, but it sure didn't help you, or you are drowning. Okay, but you have not made it to shore. And just like I did with the target breakdown, I'm going to give you facts and stats on this big, ugly bill every week until the November 2026 election.
That's good, Stella.
Okay?
That's good. We got to keep it in their minds.
Every week, I'm going to talk about how it's impacted individual Americans. I'm going to talk about from a collective how it has harmed North Carolinians. Those 10 of you members of the Congress who represent Republican districts, I'm going to beat you down and make sure your constituents know what you have done and know how you have harmed them in every which way. I'm going to start with the easy part: Medicaid, Medicare, and SNAP benefits. But then I'm going to talk about how there's no school lunches. I'm going to talk about how it affected seniors in terms of them not getting Meals on Wheels. I'm going to talk about how much burden you shifted from federal taxes to state taxes and to homeowners. Okay, the burden went from all of us to a portion of us. And I'm going to highlight which are your voters, because trust me, in North Carolina, it's your voters, not the voters in the 3 districts that are democratically held that are harmed. So just be patient, because I'm going to be on you, and I'm going to be informing your constituents into the future. So, Yolanda, once again, thank you so much for being with us today. And know that you will be back over the course of this next few months. I know I'm going to have you back for Diddy time once he's sentenced. And I'm also going to, when the veto vote comes up on the DEI, these veto votes in the General Assembly, because they're going to wait and do it sometime around Thanksgiving and Christmas, so nobody's watching. I'm going to bring you back to talk about the budget when it passes and these vetoes when they come up. And we're going to be doing our fair housing stuff in February, San Diego. So again, thank you so much for being with me.
You're welcome.
And see you soon. I just want to do, today is my anniversary. And my husband and I have been married for 43 years. So I just want to give him a little shout out. And I'm going to play this little video for him. So. And thank y'all so much for being with me this week on Doing Justice Brings Joy.